Hello, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope everyone can hear me. Welcome to the Future Enterprise series. This is actually our first webinar of the series. We actually have quite an interesting topic today. We do know that in the past we hear a lot of topics on how COVID-19 had impacted businesses and how businesses and corporate leaders cope amidst the pandemic. But today we'll be hearing what comes after next. We'll be hearing what are the new normals after the pandemic from our speakers. So the topic of today's webinar is the new normal for businesses post-COVID-19. I really appreciate the audience for being here. My name is Elizabeth from Enterprise Asia, and I will be your host / moderator for today's session. Today's webinar is a part of Future Enterprise series, which is brought to you by Enterprise Asia, a leading non-governmental organization in pursuit of creating an Asia that is rich in entrepreneurship as an engine towards a sustainable and progressive economic and social development. And Future Enterprise series is actually a series of thought leadership and inspirational sharing by business leaders and entrepreneurs on strategies and experience to address the increasingly challenging business landscape across Asia. We are very honored to have with us today our two distinguished speakers from two different backgrounds and industries to hear them share with us and also chat with us views on the new normal for businesses post-COVID-19. Okay, so I would like to begin with a short introduction of the speakers. Then what I'd like to do is I will invite the speakers to further self-introduce. So on the screen, you can see on the screen on my right side, we have Kim Teo Po Jin. He is the Group CEO of Boardroom Limited Singapore, where under his leadership, he has led Boardroom to be one of the top in developing innovative solutions for their clients since 2009. And also, we are really delighted to have with us Renzi Ramirez, President and Country Director of 24/7 AI Philippines, which is one of the Philippines' top BPO, which is business process outsourcing providing companies. Renzi actually is also an awardee at our 2018 Asia Pacific Entrepreneurship Awards, APEA, where he received an Outstanding Leader Award in Asia. So perhaps right now I'll invite the speakers to self-introduce to further elaborate about themselves. So how about I will invite Mr. Kim Teo to go first.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Elizabeth, for inviting us here and myself. I hope everyone is safe amid the lockdown. I'm not too sure which geographic countries are represented, but I was told that there are many, and I hope you are well. A brief introduction. Boardroom is a group of companies that span China right through to Hong Kong, Malaysia, Singapore, and Australia. We do have operations in the Philippines as well. A quick description of our business is that we help companies with regulatory compliance, and our profile of companies span from listed companies and large capitalization companies, as well as private companies. So we help with their shareholder meetings for listed companies. We help with their annual general meetings and extraordinary general meetings and communication to shareholders. And for private companies, we assist private companies with their submissions and regulatory compliance with respect to company incorporations, company secretarial submissions, tax submissions, audit and accounts submissions as well. So those are the areas that we are there here to service the clients. Boardroom has been in business for 50 years. So it is interesting for today's topic, and we are considered in many ways a legacy business that has been around for many years, and how we are coping with this current situation and how we are coping with the change that's going through in our business lines. And I'm looking forward to sharing that with you today. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kim. And next, perhaps Renzi, you would like to go?
Sure. Thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks, Kim. Good afternoon to all of you. My name is Renzi, and I'm responsible for all of 24/7.ai out here in the Philippines. As mentioned earlier, 24/7.ai is actually a BPO and tech company. And interestingly, we actually celebrated our 20th year globally just this April. And we did celebrate it in lockdown. We've been around for 2,000 years, and this is the first time as a company of about 16,000 people and spanning maybe across 8 countries and 5 general geographies. We all celebrated it, on video. We're actually headquartered in the Valley. We've been in the Valley since we were founded, all the way in year 2000. Over here in the Philippines, we've been around for the past 13 years, supporting industries mostly in retail, that is legacy retail, and also e-commerce. We also support companies in media and telecommunications. And as a company, our focus has really been for the past so many years, bringing together some of the best talent that we find in many different geographies, both in the Philippines, India, and all of the Philippines, rather, India and Latin America. And what we really want to do is bring talent and technology together to generate some of the best and simplest customer experiences that we can think of. Again, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for the opportunity. I hope I can be of help. And I hope all of you guys are home, healthy, and of course, all safe.
All right, thank you so much, gentlemen. All right, I just want to say a big thank you to all those that has joined us. Welcome to the series. All right, I believe we have an international arena of audience today, right? So before we begin, I'd just like to address this to the audience. So if you could actually do us a favor, if possible, I would like everyone to type into the FB comment as you are seeing this live now, like from which country and from which industry you are from. Which country and industry are you from? So can you just please type into the FB comment? Okay, so we can actually allow the speakers to know you a little bit better. Just come and let our speakers know where you're from. How about we take a minute to do that? Okay, hello from Philippines. Kay from Bacolod City, welcome. And then we have from India as well. We have Mark Lester from Philippines. Okay, Maynard from Philippines from the hospitality industry. And you can see Kay from Philippines, Rico, and Irene Koo from Singapore, F&B sector. And Darian from Philippines as well. Kelvin Wong from Singapore, hello. Okay. We have Michelle Lim from Malaysia, Property Development and Construction.
We have someone signing in from the USA, I see.
Yes, Svetlana. Hello, Svetlana.
Привет.
Yeah. Okay, we have Jack from call center industry, call center and hardware industry. Wow. Okay. Thank you for your comments, and thank you for joining us again. And in the meantime, we'll actually like to ask all of you to help us share the webinar to your friends, and even feel free to even host a watch party. Thank you so much for joining us. Okay, latest we have one Kate from Philippines from the education industry. Malaysia tourism. Okay, I think that's about it. So today we are actually very delighted and honored to have Kim and Renzi here with us today. So we'll be hearing from our distinguished speakers from their own experience and also their different viewpoints. So today we'll be talking about the businesses post COVID-19. So how do leaders cope as they go down the path of recovery for businesses after the pandemic? So we'll be hearing a lot about new normals. For example, like new normal for consumer behaviors, new growth areas in your businesses, even like new working style, and actually like what have you done from your own experience and viewpoints? What have you done to recover from the pandemic and to continue down the line and be resilient for future disruptions? So I want to ask the audience, we try to keep this as simple as possible and to be as engaging as possible. So feel free to ask the questions to the speakers and ask as many questions as you can within the hour. And just type your questions in the FB comment and we will select the questions. You can also indicate in your question like to which speaker you would like to direct your question to. So thank you so much in advance for your collaboration. So without further ado, let's get started. Basically, the dramatic spread of COVID-19 globally has disrupted lives and also businesses. So a lot of operations are basically disrupted. So we need new ways of working, innovative thinking, and super fast decision making. So the first question is, all industries, many industries out there will actually, including yours, actually will face significant obstacles because everyone is striving to get their businesses up and running. So there are many challenges such as deterioration of market demand, supply chain disruptions, even rising operating costs. So as the CEO and decision maker in your company, so can you share with us like what is your new restart strategy to reboot your business as you go down the path of recovery after the coronavirus, like from your own experience? Who would like to go first?
Well, I get to volunteer Renzi. So as a larger employer, please, after you.
Sure. So, yeah. So 24/7.ai in the Philippines, I think we probably are unique versus the other industries or the other businesses because we have been considered as essential services out in the Philippines, supporting the essential services types of industries that are out there in the US and in Australia. So I think unlike other companies, which probably will need exactly a reboot kind of strategy post COVID or post any kind of lockdown situation, I think I think the situation we got ourselves into was exactly how to maybe get very adaptive, get very nimble, and scale very quickly, knowing fully well that when you look at a BPO type of supply chain, our biggest source of supply was actually our access to the workforce. And when you look at a lockdown situation where mass transportation is put on hold and people are asked to stay home, then the first basic question becomes, how do I have access to my own supply chain to be able to provide essential services to my clients? I think while thinking about recovering from that type of disaster or that type of situation, there's a part of what we did as a leadership team to actually go ahead and say, we're probably used to a disaster that happens across 2 days, 3 days, maybe a typhoon kind of disaster. maybe something that even will go past 1 week. But when you look at now a situation where your supply chain is impacted across a period of 4 weeks, 6 weeks, and with some amount of uncertainty around how long it'll take to actually fully recover, then that's when reboot kind of strategy actually needs to kick in. I think 2 weeks into the lockdown situation, and no need to mention dates because we come from many different countries. I think what we did very quickly as a leadership team was to look at maybe three things that we needed to cover in terms of strategy. As a company, we're inspired by Hambrick's strategy diamond, where we're looking at what are the arenas that we're actually competing in. We check on ourselves and say, we've been around for 13 years, and there have been some things that we've said we're not going to do, and there have been some things that we said we're actually going to go ahead and compete in. And given the new normal, or given the uncertainties and given the crisis, then we go back and we say, what are the fields, what are the industries, what are the arenas that we said we are not going to be competing in? And then we say, what if we did have to rethink this and, in the next 24 hours, decide or choose to compete in those fields, then what would we need to do? I think that was a big first question. As an example of that, the work that we do out in the Philippines is heavily driven by data privacy and data security. And in the world of information security and all the data privacy acts, we are limited to do all of the work at work or in the office. And work from home was never an arena we actually competed in, or did we do any kind of work from home? In the Philippines for 24/7.ai, what we did very quickly, almost in a span of 4 days, was to actually move almost 140 people to work from home. That's in a situation where we did not have any kind of technology related to work from home, nor did we have any experience in doing any kind of work from home. But because that was what was needed by the business, and that was what we thought was an emerging arena, then in a matter of 4 days, in a matter of less than a week, it was a decision that needed to be quickly made by the leadership team. So that's one, right? That's an example of a reboot strategy. Where are you guys not competing in currently, and where is the competition going? And based on that, then you need to decide that you need to be there as a leadership team, right? That's the first. I think the next one that we needed to quickly get into is thinking about the phasing or the staging of the strategy. There was a part of the last 6 weeks in the Philippines where we didn't know if the lockdown was going to get lifted, whether the lockdown was going to get extended, how it would look like post 6 months from the lockdown, or even everything that we read up on the lack of treatment, the lack of vaccination, it coming up in 18 months, and even media telling us that worldwide vaccination might happen in 3 years. There was a lot of uncertainty around at what stage or what phase or what speed do you actually start to compete in those arenas. So you needed a strategy that was adaptive enough. You needed a strategy that was nimble enough to go and say, we're competing in this now, and at the same time, we're investing in work from home because this is the new normal. I think between those two reboot strategies, I think we find ourselves now being a company that our clients are going to when they're thinking about work from home. Very recently, we have major global banks reaching out to us and telling us, we'd like you guys to support our work from home strategy. And when you have a financial institution reaching out to you, that's just a double, triple guarantee around your data privacy and data security practices. So that's pretty big from my point of view. Over to you, Kim.
Thank you.
Thank you, Renzi.
Okay.
How about you, Mr. Kim?
I would share with you some of the boardroom journey. So we are a group of companies that operate also in China and Hong Kong. And most of you would know that prior to COVID, Hong Kong was having its own issues in relation to the governing of Hong Kong, and the public disturbances in Hong Kong were well and are well documented. When that was happening, it was really akin to, I guess, COVID, in the sense that we were looking at our business continuity plans. We were looking at the safety of our staff, and that's something that we are always at the top of our minds in terms of our staff safety. And we were looking at staff working from home. We were looking at staff not going to our clients' offices because the offices would be in an area that had a congregation of public disturbance. And in many ways, we were dealing in advance of if you like, a situation where we had to work in isolation from our colleagues and isolation from our clients. Immediately, as a strategy, we put in place, obviously, communication is key. Daily communication. We have weekly communication sessions to understand the situations in different countries, and there are tremendous learnings that we get from different cultures and different countries and different policies and procedures, and we found this to be immensely useful in being able to strategize. So one of the key things we discovered with respect to Hong Kong was that we had to ensure that from a communication standpoint, the field has to be level in terms of operating systems. We had to deal with bandwidth, and whether bandwidth in different colleagues' accommodations. What were the issues with bandwidth? We have colleagues of different age groups, and the good thing about this whole episode, even though it's tragic in many ways, was that it has forced a lot of our colleagues to leapfrog and jump on in terms of technology adoption. So we've had the strategy was to communicate across the offices. The strategy was to continue to upgrade where we needed to in terms of technology, to cater for clients to be able to also engage with us. So the second strategy is that we service a whole group of clients from different sectors, and the different sectors are impacted significantly differently. Obviously, if you are in the travel and leisure industry, as I see some of our colleagues who have joined today I'm just looking and glancing at there's retail industry, there's F&B industry. These industries are hit particularly hard. We have clients in the oil and gas industry that was already getting embattled from the oil price at $50, and then you had the Russian fallout from Saudi Arabia, and the price collapsed to $30, below $20, and then now we have the economic slowdown where you've seen oil price running at $15. So different sectors, and we needed to be in contact with our clients to understand the issues that they were dealing with. At the same time, we have to ensure that we ourselves continue to be an ongoing concern. So again, restart strategy as well. You can only restart if you survive, and obviously if you don't survive, you can't restart. So again, as much as we are listening to clients and trying to help them in their own business models, we also had to be listening to them, which are the clients that perhaps may not survive the current climate, and how would that then impact us, and how would we then deal with it? So that itself brought the third very important strategy, which is really cash flow, accounts receivables. How can we ensure that much as we are there for our clients, we ensure that we ourselves are there at the end of the game? How many businesses will not survive? So one of the lessons, and there are huge lessons to be learned in history. And if you look at 1918, one of the key things that was that society was actually very quick to recover post the 1918 pandemic, which obviously was significantly higher in terms of casualties. But it doesn't take away the fact that if at the individual level, if you were impacted by the pandemic, your lives and those individuals who are directly impacted do change forever, even though society as a whole moves on. So the fourth strategy is for us is that we have a strategy in place to figure out how do we put and accelerate the lessons learned. And the lessons learned, I believe, is that we will leapfrog in terms of adoption of technology. I think there is a takeoff. We're at the takeoff period where we will leapfrog some of the, if you like, some of the journeys that will take a bit longer, because I think people now have been forced to change and adopt technology than if it weren't the case. I think that is something that we're doing, and at the same time, we understand the human impact, the human impact of people who have lost their jobs. And I do hear many stories where redundancies are made. People, some of them can't afford their children's educational fees. Governments have different ability of the affordability to pay. So much as we talk about rebooting and restarting our business, we also realize that we are collective of human beings. Within Boardroom, obviously, this is my family and our family, and what can we do to make sure that our family is looked after and helped? So it's not only business, but to understand the humane element, and for us not to lose sight of that.
Yeah, I do agree. It's really important not to lose sight of that. I like the humane element that you have just shared. As both of you had earlier shared just now, it's like market demand is changing because of the pandemic. It has significantly impacted quite a lot of industries, especially those like, for example, travel. They are hit extremely hard. So what you mentioned just now is like in order to restart, you need to survive first. And one of the most important element basically is one of the most important element and aspects are basically our clients. So the next question is regarding the clients, which is the consumer behaviors. Basically, they are changing rapidly because of the COVID-19. So in order to continually to serve them in the coming months to come or the next year, how do businesses or yourself, what do you think is the future buying behavior? And basically for yourself, how do you keep pace with the shifting consumer mindset to cope with evolving demand patterns?
Okay, maybe I could take that if you don't mind.
All right.
I think one of the key winners, if you like, from businesses from what we have today going forward, is the ability to deliver. And I think the ability to deliver a service, a product that the client values. So one of the key things today that the clients value in a situation where you have a lockdown is the last mile delivery players, right? So the last mile delivery players, whether it's Grab, whether it's the Food Panda, or and Amazon, for example, I think these last mile delivery players will continue. In Boardroom as a service, we deliver a service, and the ability for us to, if you like, last mile deliver a service is going to be the differentiating factor. Many of I think there is an opportunity, and we've certainly seen it in our space, where we have been able to innovate in terms of the delivery. So, for example, an old style of delivery, we do, for example, annual general meetings of companies. But the old style of delivery, where you are, and governments have said, well, there's no more congregation. People are not allowed to congregate. But yet at the same time, we have to deliver an annual general meeting where the company has resolutions. These resolutions have to be passed, and they have to be passed with a majority vote by the shareholders. So the requirements and the compliance remains the same, but how do you deliver the outcome has now changed. And all companies must be able to respond to be able to change the delivery model, because if you can't deliver the delivery model, clients will go elsewhere. So I think that's going to be key. And I think the delivery model, you've seen it in the retail industry where you've seen Alibaba, you've seen Amazon, the online, and I've heard many, many stories where brick and mortar carry an online store, and the online store, even though it's coming from a small base, continues to grow exponentially in terms of growth rate. So I think this period has only accelerated the adoption of the delivery models.
Right, thank you, Mr. Kim. And how about yourself, Renzi?
Sure. So I think Kim was spot on when he mentioned the fulfillment part of the supply chain. So we feel that out here in the Philippines. I think we see that globally as well. But I think if I step back on that, one of the other battlegrounds we see is, and that's because we're in the field of customer service, is the battleground of the availability of information. Because I think what has happened the last few weeks is that you have consumers trying to do their usuals of trying to buy their essentials, trying to get their essentials delivered, but none of them actually have perfect information or full information around which services are open, what hours are they open, what services can be delivered, what services are not delivered. And so because of that, we saw in a lot of the customers, a lot of clients rather, that we're handling, managing. We've seen that the nature of the transactions has sometimes tripled, and the nature of the transaction is something as simple as what are the hours you are open, what days are you open, to something maybe even as complex as, can I pay my phone bill next month instead of this month? None of those transactions were ever really of are ever transactions that our clients today can monetize, because these are general inquiries, these are informational in nature. And so the battleground becomes how much of our clients or how much of companies are proactively communicating today. Sadly, even the best of the information going into Google Maps and going into Facebook isn't able to keep up with with such basic information as hours of operation or days of operation. So what we've done in 24/7 so far, and you'll see this on LinkedIn and on Facebook, is that we've actually developed a rapid response to COVID-19 for a lot of our clients. What that does is, in the next in a cycle time of 48 hours, we can actually easily put up what we call as 24/7 answers, which is a knowledge base that's actually surfing your website. And as long as it's on your website, we're actually available to help your customers get that piece of information. We also can bring up in a matter of 48 hours 24/7 chat, which is a way by which your customers can reach out to your agents that are actually sitting at home. We already know that agents are sitting at home. They are available to take transactions at home because they're not able to come into work. So we're actually gonna get out of the complex office networks and deliver those chats from your website all the way to the agents at home through 24/7 chat. So these are just samples of what we've done in order to help our clients actually support the information battleground. Unless they have the information, they're actually not able to push themselves to the point of even triggering fulfillment. We hear customers that are saying, I tried 3, 4, or 5 apps, and that wasn't the world previously. Amazon never gave us that experience. You clicked on Amazon once, you lean back and you have what you need. So today, to be surfing around 3 or 4 apps to just find out which service provider is going to fail on you first, so that you have a bad experience, so that you have some friction in your experience, is actually the first set of things that we want to fix. We want to find out who's available, and based on that, the customer's experience on the mobile phone is going to be seamless. I think that's one of the things that I think we had to focus on, or we needed to focus on, and I think that helps shape the consumer's buying behavior. Mind you, our view is that the consumer's buying behavior is going to rebound. I know that for a lot of industries, we feel that we are severely hit Some industries have already went ahead and let go of people, but in many of these crises, even all the way from the financial crisis of 2007 2008, we saw consumer demand crash, but at the same time you saw it slowly rise and then get to a point where you're hitting your physics, or your stock markets are representing again what your consumers are buying. So I think there's going to be a bounce back. It's going to be a strong rebound, I feel. So the challenge for all of us is how to go through this extended crisis, which is not going to be the 1 or 2 months, but maybe more, around an extended period. And given that, wait for that consumer to be back and buying from all of us. I think that's the biggest challenge.
Yeah, I think, Renzi, I fully agree. The communication piece as to what is going on, given that many of us are at home, obviously we read the media. We've seen a lot of success with our webinar outreach as well in terms of communicating. We've had a lot of the communication has been over the concern of salaries, payments, and can the staff continue to receive proper payments? Obviously, if the governments do decide that they want to give and can give wage support, many companies are wanting to say, well, how can we do it? How can we apply? Because these are the key things in the crisis. A lot of companies have also come back and realized that if I'm not in essential services, if I'm not in the office, how do I get and how do I sort out payments to staff? How do I do the calculations? Because I don't have it online. I don't have it with the cloud. And these are, I think, the critical services. And I think you talked about, Renzi, you talked about critical services, reliable services that in this period, people need to know that I have an answer to these critical services. And I think the communication and the continued communication, the continued engagement is critical. So thank you.
In some of our client engagements, we actually went and asked our clients, hey, do your customers even know that you're working today? In a lot of these countries, when we were told to lock down, a lot of our customers think companies are not working or apps are not working. So you need to have a way, you need to have a means of reminding your customers, hey, I'm around. And then they think I will buy. So I think that's how we kind of simplified it for them.
Yeah, I've read, I'm sure all of you have read the fact that we're now 3 hours working harder and longer because what was our travel time and our downtime, we're now sort of on the screen. So all of us are working a lot harder. A lot of our eyes are strained on the screens, but I think Renzi does, it's one thing to be working, and it's another thing to be communicating to clients. So I'm sure a lot of people are working hard, but I think Renzi's point is are we in touch with the clients so that we are listening to, well, are we working smart, not just about working hard?
Yeah. So I do agree, communicating reliable services to your clients. Yeah. So all right. So I think right now I think it's time to take some questions from the audience. Okay, I saw one from a Mr. Anthony. Okay, this is addressed to Mr. Kim. What is the most critical soft skill needed at this point of time to manage the crisis?
So I would answer the question is, I think the soft skill that is required at any time, and even more so, is the ability to embrace change. So we started 10 years ago in boardroom with digitization, and digitization in a legacy business, needless to say, was very, very difficult. But I'm proud to say that it has accelerated. And the soft skills is that don't be afraid to challenge the norm. Don't be afraid to learn new things, because it opens up opportunities that many people look at the soft skills of embracing technology as I'm being made redundant, and it's not the case. Technology allows us to free ourselves up to embrace and learn and start new journeys. So that soft skill of mentally being open to change, not to be afraid, not to be afraid of the unknown, I think is a critical soft skill that is going to be it's going to be there. It's increasingly going to be important. I think if you look at the volatilities that we've had economically, from the Asian crisis to the Gulf Wars to the Lehman crisis to the SARS, if anything, it has shown that the ability to be nimble, the ability, the soft skill to, if you like, ride the change, the soft skill to dance with the waves, that's really critical.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kim. All right. The next question we have here is from Noel Pasit. What is the biggest challenge your company face now amidst the pandemic, and how are you coping with it? So, Renzi, would you like to take the question?
Sure. I think today, 5 weeks hence, and still with a clutter of information in the Philippines and accurate sources, and I think it applies to the rest of the other parts of the world anyway. I think managing the workforce and making sure they are armed with the most recent, the most accurate pieces of information. Not not recycled pieces of information, not outdated pieces of information that will make them, that will allow them rather to make the best decision for what they would like to do with their work life, with their days, and so on and so forth. Right. So what we're seeing is that a lot of people are having to rethink the kind of travel time that they need to do in coming into work. They need to rethink how their days are going to start to look like. And so when people start to think, hey, this is going to be over in 2 weeks, public transport is going to be back in 2 weeks. I think a lot of my workforce may be sometimes misinformed on what's going to be available to them and what's not. So I think now what we're managing around is, what do we know as a matter of fact from government? What do we know as a matter of fact from health officials? What do we understand about treatment, the availability of testing, and the availability of a vaccine? And I think that's what my communications and HR teams focus on. That we're providing those pieces of information to people so they're well informed. There's just so much that they get out there, and some information is, I think it's 80% fake news actually, and all triggered to just create emotion and unnecessary panic. But I feel like if I run a workforce of 3,000 people that's well informed, I think we can make the best decision for the business, for the clients, for the customers, for the company, and for day to day what they can do with their work life.
Okay. For boardroom, I think the biggest challenge today is managing the uncertainty that is going through the minds of everyone from our colleagues to our clients, and the challenge of managing fear of the unknown, fear of what is to come. Do I have a job? Will my company survive? Will it survive in the shape that it's in? Will it survive in the way that we have been doing it? There is so much, as Renzi said, there's so much that is written out there, that the biggest challenge is to get in front and to give assurance that there is going to be a quick, if you like, in the scheme of things, I believe there's going to be within 1 year, 1.5 years, we'll be the roaring 20s again. And Renzi alluded to the fact that there will be a rebound. But in the middle of it, and as we live day to day, as I said, the challenge of, well, that's fine to be, but what about tomorrow? What about the day after? Can I feed my family? That is the biggest challenge, to get out there and provide that assurance, to be in front of the clients, and basically to be able to do that. We ourselves as companies must ensure that we can do only what we can within what we can control. And I think it's important that what we do within our control, we optimize, we do the best we can. What is not within our control, we can't. But obviously, our job is to assure our colleagues and be out there to help those colleagues of us, and where we can help, where we can volunteer our services to do that.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Okay, I have one quite interesting question here from William. Looking at the worst affected industries, travel and aviation, should government step in and bail them out, or should they be allowed to fail? Mr. Kim, what do you think about this?
Okay, interesting question. Virgin Airlines in Australia has filed for winding up, or Chapter 11, and interestingly, that gives a question that how actually from a competition standpoint, right? Qantas is now in the position where it's the only standing airline in Australia of size, as an international airline. And I think, interestingly, in other areas of the business like travel, for example, already the travel industry has been disrupted by Expedia, disrupted by, if you like, the online B&Bs, Airbnbs of this world. And again, I think there's a big debate of travel, long haul versus short haul. SIA has grounded 98% of its fleet. I think the Emirates Airlines, I think some of them are still flying, but the bulk of many airlines are grounded. Pilots are being used to, some of them are being used to train other pilots. Some pilots I know that are flying have to be quarantined, so they're no longer able to stay with their families as long as they're flying. I think the travel industry and the airline industry, because it's highly capital intensive, will see a shakeup within the airline industry. I think that's unavoidable. And I think this question of government bailouts is not new. It's been perhaps accelerated in this time frame. But I think the governments have been looking at all their national airlines like Alitalia. We've had Scandinavian air systems in Scandinavia. They're late between Air Asia and MAS in Malaysia. I think that the airline industry is going through and will continue to go through that shakeup. I think what's going to be interesting is the travel industry itself. The short haul, long haul tourism, I think that will see a fairly big shakeup.
So let me add to that, Elizabeth. I think also, the concept of a bailout has been complicated now based on previous bailouts that have been done, and that's because there's an economic impact, there's a social impact, and for some countries there's already a political impact of the bailout, right? But I think what's clear is governments need to help people impacted by those industries. So if you look at tourism, hospitality, and travel, the government basically knows who are the people that are impacted. They would know who are employed in those companies, and it is government's turn to reach out and make sure they get help. Now, again, I think sometimes people don't know of other industries where they can seek employment. They can make sure if they want to build a career in hospitality or in travel, there are industries today that are actively hiring. As an example for myself, just because I'm seeing volumes of transactions go almost 200% in some of my clients in terms of requirements. All throughout May and June, I'm hiring almost 300 people. And these are urgent requirements now. I wish the government would also help and go and say, hey, 247.ai is hiring 300. So, don't worry too much. I think that's what the government should do. More than, kind of bail out companies or, provide funding. We all don't know sometimes where that funding goes. I think the information and the help should go directly to people.
Right. Yeah, that is quite interesting. Okay, we still have 10 minutes to go, so I'm gonna go down the list of questions here. I do have one from Alia Guerrero Santos. She is asking about a question of adapting versus staying true to your core. Do you recommend that small businesses should adapt to the changing times, even if that means like doing work that is not their core, meaning like not their core business, or best just to survive? Like, yeah, is it better to just remain focused on improving themselves, sticking to what they're good at, or they should try something new, like a new growth in their business?
Okay, maybe I could take
It's okay.
that.
Yeah.
So the way we look at our, if you like, our core business is making sure that we provide something of value to the client, so the client values it and is prepared to pay for it. That's the definition of core, and that definition of core is finding something that the clients want, they need it, and they value it to the point that they're willing to pay for it. Okay, so if that's the definition of core, then Ms. Santos, that really answers the question. Is we are in business for clients, for them to pay. We're not in business for what we like to do and what we think that we are good at, right? Because that becomes a hobby. We're in business to basically drive client satisfaction, clients' needs. And if our services are no longer of need by the client, if our services are not valued by the client, it's just a commodity and the clients can, they can get it for free, then you really have to change. You don't really have a business, you have a charity. Thank you.
All right. How about Renzi?
Yeah, for me, very quickly, I think the crisis is giving us already a view of the future where, I mean, to be very blunt, you have an option now to throw your core out the window. And for many years, I think businesses like ourselves, we stick to our core because of two things, right? One is you have the people, and the people to you means, an organization and a culture, and you guys have a certain way of doing things together, and that's part of your core. And then the other piece of your core is what are the investments you've made? And these are, sticky, lumpy investments that you've made in the past, and therefore it defines your core. I think between those two things, your people and your assets, then you start as a company to define your core. Now, you fast forward into this, if your core has been irrelevant the past 4 weeks of a lockdown, if your core isn't something that you've been able to activate and make value out of 4 weeks, then you just need to prepare to either throw your core out and rethink your business. Because I think for many years we've heard words like transform, structurally transform, pivot, reboot, and so on and so forth. I think because some businesses are under threat of survival and with so much unknown in the new normal, part of what leaders need to be responsible for and take ownership of is even revisiting your core and saying, I'm building a new core. I think that's how we need to look at it.
Yeah, and I think one of the I would say the guiding thoughts that I have as a CEO is I wake up paranoid that I can get disintermediated by in the next 24 hours or next day, and I think that paranoia drives the ability to re-examine what you're doing every day. It may be, you may have invested a lot in the business, but what you have invested is the past. It's already done. It's already sunk. And if what you have put in does not provide the model for what is needed by the clients, then don't let the historical cost of the investment stop you from writing it off and moving on. I think it's easier to say, but the hardest thing to do is to let go of your comfort zone, to let go of putting a lot of money in, even when it is clear that one has to move away from that. And if you have that sense of I guess, paranoia, it may be a strong word, but the fear of, obviously there are things there that I don't know. It could happen. I think that drives it drives you to innovate. It drives you to experiment, and it drives you to have engagement and conversations with clients that perhaps you may not normally have. And I think it's all about innovation comes from challenging the norm, and that sense of purpose as well.
Thank you so much. We have a question from Veronica Wong. She actually addressed this to both Mr. Renzi and Mr. Kim. Would you predict a surging trend of open innovation? So, Mr. Renzi, would you like to go first?
Sure, definitely. I think this is the time for all of that. I think if I just add something to the innovation piece, I think it'll be a time of really strategic partnerships. I think over the last 5-6 years, our world has been dominated by what? By Amazon, by Apple, and a lot of times, we partner with them, they compete with us. So now I think more than ever, a lot of us, tech providers or companies need to look at how fast we need each other so that we can then generate and get into the consumer's home as fast as we can. Telcos were battling this complexity many years back, right? All of them were racing to get into the consumer's home, but then that's only bandwidth so far. That's only internet, right? When you look at all the other industries and where they tried to all reside on the mobile phone, now we just need to look at what are the strengths of each provider, and then go ahead and make those partnerships very quickly. Because when you look at innovation is just building on what someone has already built. And if you guys together can come up with something that is more innovative than the other provider, then you guys are just maybe a day, a week ahead of them before they partner with someone else, and then they make something innovative as well. So the more partnerships that we all make and the more partnerships we go through, I think the faster the pace of innovation will be. So I think innovation has been talked about over the last decade, just because of the iPhone and digitization and artificial intelligence. But now more than ever, adding on partnerships to that, I think will be key.
All right, thank you so much. Actually, I have one very interesting here from Marky McAllintoll. Given that humans are social creatures, how are we addressing the mental health and anxiety issues of your employees with the working from home during this pandemic? So yeah, and also she's asked, what's the response or feedback from your existing customer? Yes, I think perhaps we can address the mental health part of the question first. How about Mr. Kim?
So in Boardroom, we've had cooking classes.
Wow.
We've had karaoke sessions. We have virtual parties. So I think, and it's, as I said, it's not necessarily organized at the company level, but among the colleagues themselves, they get together to do that. And we have also a town hall where we talk to the staff, colleagues. I have obviously maintaining in touch with everyone, and everyone has their own keeping in touch and their own so-called working time together that they have. So I think the over and above that, I mean, there are, interestingly enough, when we do have our sessions over the video conference, we have family members who are very enthusiastic and wanting to know what their father or mother does, and they join in the video conference, and we try to obviously make it as a family as possible. But it is a time, it's an interesting time where where people are spending an immense amount of time at home with their families in a very in a way where they had the office environment, and now you have the office and a work environment and family environment all intertwined as one. And again, it comes back to the soft skill that you need to have an open mind. You need to adapt to the change, and don't get worked up about it. Everyone is going through. You're not alone. Everyone is going through the same situation that you are. So embrace it as a once, at least you're going through it, and it's a novelty. So it's a good thing.
Renzi, do you have anything else to add?
I think just very quickly, I think we do three things for the employee, right? First is we make them understand the change, why it needs to happen, what it's all about, and acknowledge that it is change, right? The second piece that we get into in aid of mental health is to make them admit, or to make them understand what the change means to them. So because sometimes I think we miss that. We see change, but we're not easily able to articulate what that change means to us. So we actually go ahead and listen to them. We make them verbalize it and say, what does this mean to you? And then I think finally, and this one I think is also relevant. It's one of the most important soft skills in this pandemic, and I think it's basically taking ownership. And that's because you see so much information around us telling us, hey, it's not your fault. This is a virus, and this is not something you did to yourself. What you can't control your surroundings, you can control the things around you. What can you do if the government tells you you're on lockdown? So because of that, then when you look at, they don't understand the change, they can't verbalize what it means to them, and then they feel like they're out of control, then it translates into serious mental health issues. But if you reverse that, and then you go ahead and say, I want you to understand the change. I want you to be able to tell me what it means to you. And finally, tell them that while it looks like it's out of your control, you need to take ownership and control your own day-to-day. We see a remarkable shift in how people look at things, how people behave, and how they kind of emerge from all of this and say, okay, now I get it, and I take ownership, and I feel better about the change around me. That's what we do.
Yeah, and I think not to forget the last thing, that as human beings, we are very resilient, and there are many, many examples where we've come through far worse, and take heart, and we will come out the better for it.
Definitely. All right. I think we are. How time flies! It's already 1 hour. Right. Actually, I looked back at the questions from the audience. I actually missed one out. How about we just answer one last question from the audience? So I have here from a Mr. Sudhir Sharma. His question to you guys is, my question is that will the bounce back be V-shaped or W, meaning like V-shaped recovery or W-shaped recovery?
Let me get my crystal ball. Hang on. Where is it?
Okay.
I have my crystal ball. So, okay, I got it here.
Oh, there you go.
And my crystal ball says I'm very confused. But in seriousness, I think no one really knows. I think we know what we know. What we do know also is that the virus is very tricky. It's hard to pin down. There have been, that you can read, and everyone has read. We all hope it's going to be V-shaped, obviously. So I think at this point in time, we speculate, and whatever we say, we speculate. I think the key thing is that whether it's V or whether it's W, you don't end up like Volkswagen and get caught up with sort of things that don't work. But I think today we've spoken about some of the key characteristics, the key learnings, whether it's V or W. I think it will hold us true to the outcome. And as I said, I repeat myself here, we all hope it's going to be V.
How about Renzi? Oh, crystal ball.
I think every time I hear that question, I simply just say, there are a lot of W's in V. So you just have to make sure, you've bought your Apple stocks right there, and then during the rebound, you've made the good investments, whether it's personal investments or investments for the company. I think in the long run it'll be a V.
All right, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I think we have come to the end of the broadcast. We did our best to select and answer the questions from the audience, and I do apologize if we did not manage to answer all. So thank you, Renzi and Kim, for being so fabulous. Thank you for your informative and insightful sharing. And on behalf of Enterprise Asia, I would like to just thank everyone. You have been a wonderful group of attendees for being a positive contributor. And before we go, Kim and Renzi, do you still have anything else to say to the audience, like before we go?
Well, I would stay safe, everyone, and I hope you've had valuable takeaways, and I hope I see you and our paths will cross. And it's all about the human, the social thing that we miss so much. I think as human beings, we are social creatures, and I do hope that our paths will cross, and I do wish you all the best.
All right, for myself, thanks for the opportunity. I hope it was helpful. I wish all of you, your friends, your family are all healthy and safe. And to all you leaders out there, business executives, entrepreneurs, let's all stay optimistic. I'm very sure once the rebound is there, it's going to be a big one. So see you all there.
All right, thank you so much to Kim and Renzi. Lastly, the video will still be available on the Enterprise Facebook page. And for those of you who want to know more about Enterprise Asia, please visit our website at www.enterpriseasia.org and do follow us on the Enterprise Asia Facebook to get updates on our upcoming events. So thank you once again, everyone, for attending today's Future Enterprise Series live webinar on the new normal for businesses post-COVID-19. We hope to see you again next time, and have a great week ahead. Stay healthy.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Bye.